It's, yeah, the little hamster for running that. Good, all right.
All right, it is 10:05. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Let me look into you for the roll call. We've got all the names and numbers. First item on the agenda is the approval of this agenda. I have no additions or deletions.
I do not either. I would make a motion to accept the agenda as written.
And I'll second it, and we will vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is carried.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Just for the record, it might be good for us to say as part of the call, part of the roll call, to say that Dan Erickson had notified us ahead of time that he could not be here.
Okay.
So it's.
Did you get that note? Mr. Erickson will not be here.
And then as far as the agenda goes, the only thing I would like to say is the audit presentation by Keith Porter. I'd like to keep that a little flexible. I expect him to be here around 10:45, 11, 11:15. So
Okay.
we can work through all the other stuff, but when he gets here, just kind of merge him into the agenda.
Segue him right in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the June 23rd meeting. I was absent for that, so kind of look to you, Mr. Schwartz.
Yeah, I've read it through it very thoroughly, and I have no issues or changes or corrections.
Okay, so no additions or corrections.
With that said, I would make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Motion has been made, seconded. All those in favor of approving those minutes, they say so.
Aye.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. We have a motion carried. Number 4 is our public comments area. Anybody that has anything of concern or interest to, I usually look to Kathy. Have you had any inquiries or requests? Keith, none?
I have that.
Okay, then I'm going to. Couple of things I'd like to bring up today. One is this is an unusual setting for us. I have people closer and in a little tighter. And there's a reason for that. I'm sure my fellow commissioners would agree when I say it's important for us as commissioners to get good information and cooperation and a feeling of, I'll find that word in a minute, but I'll come back. How important it is for us as commissioners to do a good job for our community requires that we have good information and help from people like Jared, Scott, Kathy, who work in our staff regularly. It's even important to hear from Jules. and Michelle, but I'll come back to him in a minute.
You might know one.
So these folks that are at this table are important and critical part of our team of making good decisions. We can't do a good job without you guys here, all of you. And you know, the west addition to the city where you guys purchased the new property, we cooperated with that. You helped us, you supported us get ECE to transfer some of that. So we're going to be able to provide water and electricity to the first customer you have. We're going to be able to get out there thanks to these guys. And you know, they have all had a look out there and know what needs to happen to me. It's this kind of cooperation, working together, that makes this whole thing work. And I think it's critical for you guys to feel part of what we are. It's important. Okay. The other thing I'd like to bring up is on June 10th of this year, we had an event. We had the highest electrical usage in our history, as far as we can tell. We had some hot spots back in 2013. Some of you that have been here longer than Moby Dick would remember that. But you know, we hit 14.2, I think was the number
14.033.
Yeah, that's the number I was looking for. 14, but it was over 14 megawatts of electricity that was used in our service area here. That was a big deal. Well, one of the consequences of that is that electrical bills go up. And people get excited because it wasn't like that last month and now it's this month and it's high. And, you know, on social media being what it is, the word gets out, everybody's incensed and upset and concerned and all of those things. And I can assure you that there's nobody more concerned about that than the people here at Princeton Public Utilities. Not only from a commissioner's standpoint, from Jeremy Scott, Kathy's standpoint, because you guys are dealing with that, and Kate, as you know, has to deal with these situations as they come up. And if there's an issue out there that you think as a customer, as I think as a customer, there's something wrong, then we need to hear about it. We have fantastic people in the office. They can work with customers and they do it on a daily basis, day in and day out. And we have the technical expertise to get up and see if there's something wrong with that meter. We want to know, and we want to know now. So there's nothing wrong with making a call and getting a hold of somebody that could put you in touch with the right people. If your electric meter's spinning off the wall and you've got nothing on, then we need to check it out. If the water's going and going and going and going and you don't use any water at all, you've been out of town for a month, then something's wrong. Maybe the toilet's running. I don't know. We've found issues in the past, but we want to help. We want to make it right. And I'm not just talking about commissioners. I'm talking about everybody that works here. We want it fixed. So please don't be bashful. Give us a call. We'd like to fix it as soon as possible. Summer's tough. We've had more 90-degree days, 90-degree plus days this year than we've had in the last 20 years, according to somebody at NPR yesterday on the news. So it's all hot news, you know. But that, you know, those kind of hot days and dry like this has been a challenge for all of us. So if there's anything we can do, please give us a call and let us work it out for you. Okay? I've had enough. So public comments are done. Certification of accounts payable. The accounts are up there on the wall. I've been through them. I didn't notice anything. Mr. Schwartz, were you able to get through those?
Yes, I don't have any questions today, which is unusual, but
Well, we count on your fastidious eye there, so.
no, I have no problem with it. I make the motion to approve.
Okay, motion is made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. The simple reports, minutes and metrics and so forth. Keith, I'll let you just say a few things and then we'll move on.
Yeah, all the standard stuff is in the packets. So unless, you know, we have those in there every month, so unless there's any specific question. It's just, there is information.
Okay, thank you. And then updates, electrical department. First part is generation plant. Scott, you're on.
Got backup one.
Sorry?
You got a backup one
Yeah,
to the financial.
we already did, that was part of the reports.
Oh, that was part of the report. My bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Generation plant. Sunday, we got called to run from 10:30 to 2:30.
This past Sunday?
Yep, this past Sunday.
Ooh,
Yep. And then today we're running from 2 to 6. We got called to run. The boiler we've had down, we're retubing the boiler. The tubes are back in and we're waiting on the state boiler inspector to sign off so we can put it back in service. The number 3 engine is still down. We got the liner back in and went to fill it full of water and we started springing leaks from water pumps to gaskets to you name it. So we're chasing some water leaks around. We're having a shaft rebuilt. We're waiting on some parts from Fairbanks. But it's quite a challenge to get it back in service now that it's been drained for so long.
It seals.
Yeah, the gaskets dry out and them old engines like to be warm and full of water. But we'll get it.
This is number 3. This is an old generator?
It's the newest of the old we have.
Oh,
It's a 1977, so it's the newest of the old units.
okay. Well, the running that we're doing right now, this is grid support stuff going on.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Distribution system.
Yeah, we have, since our last meeting, we have continued with our AMI installs. We're almost there. We got about 180 left. After we get those in, of those 180, 5 of them will have to remain. We don't have those meters yet. They'll be coming in later this fall. We had an outage on Saturday. We had a tree fall through the feeder that cuts up through the river bottom that goes to the north end of town. That was approximately 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Those folks were out. We had to shut the breaker off in the plant so the guys could fix it, sleep up some wires. And that was one of our first main outages, probably the first main outage we've had since we've had a significant amount of the AMI meters in. And the Yukon system worked like it was supposed to. We were able to see who was out, who wasn't out. Once we got it re-energized, all the meters began to report back in. So we were confident that everybody that should be back on or that was out was back on. Versus prior to that, we had to drive around and see if lights were on, if people were home, call a few people back and hope that everybody came back on. So that was nice to see. We have an underground project, a smaller underground project we started on today on 17th Avenue North, up by the mini storage units, up by the Pike Industrial Park. Russ, our contractor, was here yesterday, did a little bit, and then was going to continue with that. We've had a handful, probably 6 or 8 new services we installed. There was a street light hit this past weekend on First Street. A gentleman was not paying attention or whatever, hit a pole. The guys were able to just shim it up and fix it up, that there was no significant damage. We don't have to replace it. We had some safety training last week, pole top and bucket rescue, which we have to do every year. That went well. And then just the normal GIS stickering, labeling, locates service orders as they come in. So.
Yeah, thanks. We're continuing to underground more of our services.
Yep.
Regular part of
Yep,
it.
all of the new services that go in are underground. We don't do overhead services anymore. As part of this project that we're starting, that started mainly today, we had sent letters out 3 or 4 weeks ago. See if people were interested in going underground for, as part of this, getting the overhead primary underground for reduced costs since we were in the area.
We had kind of a tragedy explosion last week. You guys were on scene, I understand.
Yes, I was out of town on vacation, but yeah, there was a house explosion on the north end of town. And I believe from what I've heard that our guys were there pretty much right away along with the water department and did what they needed to do and got out of there as fast as we could. So,
Yeah. I suppose water need to be disconnected, all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah, they actually had us delay shutting the water off until things calmed down around there a little bit. At that point, we were just pumping water into the basement.
Yeah.
But it was decided that we would be more in the way to get it shut off at that point, just to stand back and let them do what they needed to do. And we went in.
Appreciate the support. Okay. Let's clear that. Okay, and the City of Princeton update.
Scott didn't get a chance to do the water department.
Oh, I'm sorry. You talked once, so I kind of wrote them off. Back to water. Forgive me.
No problem. Everything in the water department is going well. We had a cooling fan in the number 9 well enclosure fail on us. We were able to replace that and get well 9 back up and running. We had a PLC fail in the north water tower Saturday night, which turned out to be the power cord. We had parts on hand, changed the cord out, and we were back up Monday morning. We were up for the house explosion and shut the water off. The bell box repair is still, we're still moving forward with that as time allows for it. At the second, most of the guys are in the plant helping to try to get number 3 unit back up and running. We did go around and check the dog waste stations at the treatment plants to make sure that they had bags and that the trash wasn't overflowing.
Oh, good,
All is well.
good, thank you. Sorry about that oversight. Now, the city has an update, I'm
I
sure.
had 3 things that come to mind that wrote down here. The last council meeting, the city had the second reading for the ordinance to annex the Sherburne Mobile Home Park, which voted on 5-0. So that is, will be part of the city. I believe it has to go through some state issues.
Yeah.
You know.
It'll be another 30 days, 45 days, probably, once I'm working on a legal description issue from a previous annexation, so we're just gonna throw.
This
that
is
in.
the mobile home park on the south side of
County
town.
Road
Yes,
2,
yeah.
south of, on County Road 2. South 2. And there was citizen input and council listened and made a decision to, at this time, they felt it was the time to annex that into the city limits of Princeton. So that's done. It went well. It went well. Then we approved the bids for connecting 19th Avenue and 21st Avenue. That's the beginning of that project to
Correct,
to
yeah.
get that completed, 21st Avenue. The first portion of that is 19th Avenue and the Industrial Park to connect. And so construction bids will be going out, RFPs will be going out for that. That's moving forward. And then I think that the comprehensive pay study that the city is has the council authorized to do basically a pay study to see where we stand with other cities of our size and geographic location and that sort of thing. So, you probably usually have big lists.
Well, you pretty much covered it. So the reason that the 21st Avenue project is going to be go up for advertisement this fall is our engineer was hearing from contractors that they're looking for fall work. So essentially we will, plan is to basically advertise as required 3 times during the month of August. So we have to publish 3 times in a row. And then bids will be due September 2nd with tentatively the award of the contract September 9th with construction to start mid to late September. So that'll be that road connection from the, what I call the South Industrial Park to 21st, going by the public safety building. In terms of business park, which Greg, you referenced in your discussion during public comment, the plat, with a preliminary plat and layout. We have 2 or 3 interested parties. We just met with a 4th last week. That's a young gentleman. I say young because everybody to me is young, but he actually owns a custom cutting design business. He makes custom cutting heads for a variety of clients in the Twin Cities metro area. He's looking to get out of his, he needs more space. He's in St. Francis right now. And he would like to purchase a lot and build a building and move to the business park. So we have quite a few interested parties. So once we can get the preliminary plat, I believe it's going to the Planning Commission this month, and then it'll go to council, and then we can actually, and simultaneously we're working on the grant from the Federal Economic Development Authority to help pay for the infrastructure, sewer, water, streets, electric, well, we probably won't pay for the electric, but prepping for the electric, prepping for broadband to go through there, so. Let's see what else. I think that's, oh, yeah, thank you. Shipwreck, the old shipwreck facility, they've applied for annexation. We met with them last week to talk about incentives, if there was any way for us to financially assist them. We have some ideas, but we need to get some numbers back from them. So that public hearing will be the 26th of August, first reading likely scheduled, so second reading will be in September, so there's another piece of property that will be coming into the city. They have some really nice, it's a brewery, their proposed use is a brewery, so they're working with cooperatively with Coburn's. They'll be doing some cross marketing. There'll be a dog play area. They're really trying to gear that site to draw people in off the highway. So they're being somewhat creative in terms of their marketing and their strategy and stuff. So I think they'll make a go of it. So that we anticipate getting a site plan hopefully this week. And when we do, we'll have Keith and Jeremy and Scott are participating in the city's weekly department head meetings. So we'll use that time to get everybody to take a look at that site plan and make sure that we can consolidate all the comments in one fell swoop and be a little more efficient when we're talking with developers. So the other thing we're working on is the 7th Avenue County Road 4 discussions. The county wants to do some road work, and we have infrastructure, we meaning the utilities in the city. And so we have an updated engineer's estimate, and I'm hoping to basically get a group meeting scheduled to talk about the approach that we want to use for that, and then I'll be setting up a meeting with the county engineer on that project. So I think that kind of covers a lot of what we did make. We did have a successful audit presentation. Again, I'm sure you'll hear it from your auditor, small organization, making sure we have appropriate checks and balances and separation of duties, which is always a struggle. The other comment they made on the audit was that we have too many open funds, because we have funds for projects and whatnot, and running negative balances in some of those funds. So we're going to have to Tracy, our finance director, is committed to essentially looking at the accounts that aren't being used and closing those, and looking at how we use our accounts, and so we're not running a negative deficit, negative balance in some of those funds. So that'll be a project for us over the next year or so, or two, depends on how many things we want to close and whatnot. So
A lot of balls in the air with the city.
yep, and that's not even to mention we're going to start budgeting, and in addition to the classification and compensation study that Jules referenced, Tracy's working on looking at new financial software for the city. So yeah, so we've got quite a few projects running, and it's not really a city project, but Stephanie's been assisting Jules and the group to replace the Solheim scoreboard, Solheim Field. And so she's set up some stuff through I think it's our reservation software, where people can donate. So there's a QR code, and yeah, so folks can. So we're assisting that group. Some fundraising.
Yeah, it's going well. We've raised just from, it's trickling into whatever.
Yeah.
You know, for $5,000. We're looking for sponsors on the scoreboard yet, so that's coming with some people or businesses inquiring, so it's going well. It'll be a nice addition. Jeremy's gonna help us with locating exactly where it's gotta go, make sure we get power there. And everything like that. Appreciate
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Michelle, with the interest in the park, do we have any kind of employment numbers?
Not right now, because again, nobody's locked in yet. So for example, the gentleman that we met with last week, he has it's himself and 3 other staff people, but he's interested in adding like 1 to 2 more people. One of our other interested parties is a company out of Isanti. They're busting at the seams, and then how they, I don't know what their numbers are and how many they would add, but so we can, as we get closer and people actually sign on the dotted line, well, especially those that are looking for some type of assistance through the Minnesota Investment Fund or those types of funds where they do have to have numbers. We'll have a better handle on that. I know at least one of the companies is interested in getting some equipment, so we'll be helping out through that process through the Minnesota Investment Fund. We met with, not to segue too much longer, but we met with Glenn Metalcraft 2 weeks ago. They have a Minnesota Investment Fund grant, and they have to have employment numbers as part of that. And one of the things that they're struggling with is, again, workforce, the supply of workforce. It's just tough to, find people to work and try, and hopefully Stephanie is working with the chamber to try to work with the schools to try to do some type of either internship programs or to try to connect the school with some of our industrial folks that need people. And they are, I think the gentleman said that they've got people that have been at Crystal Cabinets is who we met with. They've got some folks that have been there 40 years that are, they're getting to a point where he's looking at, sort of a potential wave of retirees. Well, you need people to backfill that. And then you also have the fact that you're losing 40 years of experience when they walk out the door when you retire. They're doing great with automation over there, but there's still a lot of handwork that happens at Crystal Cabinets that, especially their custom pieces. And so I see that is going to be our biggest challenge, whether it's, us replacing paid on call firefighters or the city replacing, long-term police officers, because we know that those guys can choose to go fairly early. I'm sure you guys have folks in your organization that have been here a long time that may or may not be thinking about retirement, and how do you replace those people, because they're just, my dad and I were at International Falls this weekend for a family event, and I kid you not, they cannot open Dunkin' Donuts because there's no employer, there's nobody that wants to work. Subway closes on the weekends because they can't find people to work. There were tons of places in that town that were just struggling because we went to a restaurant to go have breakfast, and there's a sign on the door that says our cook didn't show up today, but it won't be open until 11. So it's just the workforce supply is pretty critical, and I don't know how we fix that as organizations, but I think it's something that we all really need to be concerned about.
You could never retire.
Well, I got a ways to go.
That's the way it is.
So
Yeah, I was just asking for the point. The businesses, new employment, people move to Princeton, they build a house, they shop locally, you know,
Yep.
and look at it from that. Helps us get to that 5,000.
Yeah, yeah. And I apologize, I didn't mean to segue somewhere off in the
No, that's
weeds,
fine.
but
Well, yeah, those segues sometimes keep us focused on, holy cats, if we do that, maybe we need to be preparing for more services. And, we start talking about 21st Street, I don't know 21st Street from the whole month. We start talking about doing road work, I start thinking about, do these guys have pipes in the ground over there? Do we have, and then if you're going out west or south, I'm not sure which it is, but, are we prepared for that? I know the guys have looked out there at that area west of the public safety building. We don't have anything in the ground. So as you guys are looking for people to put in roads there, we've got a couple of guys that are very interested in how's that going to screw up their schedule.
yeah.
Let's
Well, and
all-
that's why it's been very helpful that not only Keith attends, but that Jeremy and Scott are at the table for our department head meetings, because I do try to use that meeting to, and Stephanie does a good job of kind of putting stuff on people's radars, but like when we get the design plans, the preliminary plans for the industrial park, my intent would be that we bring that to the meeting because we need input from your staff as well as wastewater and public works and those types of things. So it's a really great opportunity for us to really talk to each other and share information and be more efficient, and we can speak with one voice to prospective developers or even ourselves in terms of what we've got going. So.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. D is the general manager's update. That's you.
Yes, sir. Couple of things, just so everybody's aware, we did receive notice from the DNR that we are officially in a drought warning phase. As a result, we've been doing some PSAs over the last week regarding the lawn sprinkling restrictions that are part of city ordinance 930.09. So working with folks to make sure that they understand and it's just good practice to not water between 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. Most of that evaporates right away anyway. It's better to sprinkle in the morning and evening, but also to follow an even odd rotation schedule. So if your house number is an even number, you can water on an even day, and if your house number is an odd number, you can water on an odd day. It is on lawn sprinkling. If the DNR escalates that, we don't have anything more than that in the ordinance, but I can envision this utility also making recommendations to the folks to try to start limiting recreational water use and other activities further on. As the drought continues to worsen, it is something that we're going to monitor to make sure that the aquifer levels are where they need to be. On the legislative side, I just want to mention that the new cold weather rule guidelines was passed. We're going to be working to integrate those new deadlines into our process. So it's going to take us a little bit as we convert over, but that'll be an activity we're working on. On the administrative side, our 2022 SIPA O&M budget has been submitted. We were scheduled to do some disconnections last week, which was postponed until tomorrow. And that was due to a long protracted heat wave with highs consistently above 90. Looking at the weather forecast for tomorrow, as well as I did this morning pull up the National Weather Service as well. There is just so the commission is aware, there is in state statute, which is the 216B.0975, which says that involuntary disconnects are prohibited during, and they list the three areas: excessive heat watch, heat advisory, or excessive heat warning as defined by the National Weather Service. National Weather Service came out, it was either this morning or last night, stating that Sherburne County is under excessive heat watch through Wednesday evening. Mille Lacs is not, but we serve customers in both Sugar County and Mille Lacs County. As a result, the disconnects for Wednesday will be postponed until Thursday. I expect Thursday the heat rate will break, and those heat advisories will go away. So we're going to postpone that, the disconnections for one more day. And then Jeremy mentioned, we've got the electric AMIs nearly complete. Now that we're, and you'll find out later on, we're at 94% for electrics. Now that we're hitting numbers like that, it is prudent for us to begin reevaluating some of our internal processes and procedures to make sure we utilize the new functionality that we have with the AMI meters. The first priority that I would, that internally we are going to start looking at is our outage process. So with the old AMR system, we really relied on folks to call us. We get a lot of phone calls. Debbie actually came in on Saturday as well, our billing clerk, to help manage some of that workload. And the outage would get taken care of. And then, like Jeremy said, we drive around, spot check, but you kind of cross the fingers and we got it. With the new AMI system, we can run system-wide reports to find out which meters might not have power going to them, so we can continue to investigate. And the outage from Saturday, we ran that report and everything was functional. So give us a lot of confidence that we fixed everything. But what that process is internally, right down to, every single step is something that I think we should look at again. In addition, how do we incorporate a communication protocol as well? How do, when there's an outage and we're getting all these phone calls, is there a way for us to be a little bit more proactive with the field staff to either communicate via the website, via Facebook? And at some point, I would love for us to get to the point like the Rochesters and Austins of the world to do text messaging, if at all possible. So there's a lot of possibilities that we could still do with this system. But part of that's going to require us to just take a step back, look at what our current process is, what things still make sense, what things can we do, what things could we do if we just maybe tweak something here and there, and reevaluate that. So that's going to be an ongoing internal activity in looking at how we do our emergency response on things such as outages. The only other thing I wanted to, I just wanted to reiterate a process that we've had in place. And we've been dealing with this off and on over the year. We did the hydrant annual fee, but it all comes down to bulk water purchases. I just want to, again, put out another PSA, public service announcement to folks. And, if there happen to be any contractors listening or anything, that it's really important for them to communicate with us, for them to talk to us, to arrange any bulk water purchases. We have a contractor hydrant right here at the south storage lot, which is where we want those contractors to come in and make those large purchases so that there's no confusion, that everybody knows what's going on, and Scott's able to keep an eye on the system and make sure that everything is kept safe for our customers. So just really encourage folks that who are filling water trucks to come in and talk with the office and set up a schedule so that we can do the purchases right here. That's what I had to cover, unless anybody has any questions.
Just a note, Weather Central just updated their forecast for tomorrow. Yesterday, it said tomorrow was supposed to be 94. Today, it says it's going to be 100 tomorrow. So I can have a break tomorrow.
No, I'm hoping by Thursday.
They do say, it just says 87 for Thursday, so it's a break. Doesn't seem like a lot of break to me. I'm a winter kind of guy, to be honest, but it is what it is. So, just
So
saying.
yeah, we'll be following the National Weather Service guidelines.
Perfect. Perfect.
Throughout the rest of this week.
Okay, good. Thank you, Keith.
See, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Mr. Butcher, I was
Yes.
just curious, the no watering, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., even days, odd days.
Yes.
How is that message getting out to the community?
I've done Facebook posts, I put stuff on our website, I know the city has shared that information on their Facebook page as well. We are putting a bill message on the bills that will be going out here in the next couple of days, so the July bills that head out. We'll have a bill message talking about the lawn sprinkling ordinance and the details of what that has involved as well.
And that's effective now. Or
Technically, the ordinance that the city has on its books is from May 30th to September 1st. It's always in place. It's just when things get severe is when we really start looking at some enforcement.
Okay.
So we did talk about it at the city staff meeting last week. So I know the city's been getting some questions from residents about this. The city's ordinance actually does have a fine associated with it. If people are found in violation, we're really trying to just rely on warnings and education, to let folks know.
that's the key is, that's why I'm asking. Is
Yeah,
education,
yeah.
paper I'm asking.
Yeah, we do have door hangers. So if we, and I made it available for the police department as well. Just if somebody's seen a violation, you put a door hanger on their door, just making sure they're aware.
Yeah, and the local paper.
Union Times.
I have contacted Connor at the Union Times as well, and provided him all the information that we put on our website.
The next council will let the rest of the council know too, and it'll be covered there too as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, 8A is Mr. Porter's presentation. We'll kind of bypass him for the moment and go to mid-year budget update.
Yes, sir. Given that we're past the mid-year, I just thought it would be beneficial to share with the commission just a high-level budget report, which is memo 21-23. A couple of things I'm going to point out is I just summarized the total operating revenues and total operating expenses for each of the departments. You'll see for revenues, electric is slightly above budget projections, but it's 1.15%. I guess, my general perspective on it is plus or minus 5% is always in the noise. It's really hard. If it was ever exact, I would be triple checking my numbers. That would be pretty incredible. Water for operating revenues. Excuse me, sir. Keith, if you just want to grab a seat. Thank you. For water, we're under, but again, it's less than that, plus or minus 5%. So that all seemed very reasonable to me. For operating expenses, there's a couple things, and this is just given the nature of our business. A lot of our major construction expenses occur in the summertime. It's not necessarily, in 1/12 increments throughout the year. And sometimes those bills don't come in until the July, August, September timeframe. So it seemed pretty reasonable to me that the expenses would be a little bit less for, just because those bills haven't come in yet. So I felt that on the electric side, it's under by almost 8%. On the water side, it's under by 17%. That is driven by two primary factors. One is that we have not heard back yet from the Minnesota Department of Health regarding the wellhead protection plan update. So all the money budgeted for the wellhead protection plan is still sitting in our account. So we haven't spent any of that money yet. And in addition, keep your fingers crossed, we do keep money budgeted in water for repair work that needs to be done on water mains and things like that. We haven't, the system's been just chugging along. So some of those contingency funds have not been needed yet, which is the other reason why we are under in terms of expenses. I thought that would give the commission a good high overview. If there are additional things that the commission would like as part of a mid-year review, please let me know. I'm happy to incorporate whatever the commission desires.
Good. No, thank this was very interesting. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Porter. Yes. We've saved a special seat for you right over here.
I suppose it's a hot one too, huh?
Well, the mic is in an auspicious position, you might know. You're on. Thank you, thank you for coming.
Not a problem. Yep, not a problem. Get rid of those so I can see. If everybody's got a copy of the audit, I'll just gonna kind of just hit highlights and different points.
And Michelle, Kathy does have an extra one, if you want one as well.
Wow. So basically, the audit in itself is what we own in the audit as the CPA or as the accounting for auditing firm is actually the audit reports. The rest of the information, the financial statements, the notes to the financial statements, the MD&A, and that is basically utilities. So still I'll hit points and I guess I always like to say one other thing. We go through and figure what internal controls are in place, and then we decide on what items to test. So again, you know, could something come up if we were to look with the information that we did look at? We'll go right to the report. The report starts on page 2 and 3. That's our audit report ability for the financial statements. And so management is responsible for preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements in accordance with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. And this includes the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal controls and relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of the financial. The auditor's responsibility is to plan and perform the audit and to obtain an audit obtain audit evidence. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the business type activities and each major fund of the Princeton. So then we move on from our opinion on the financial statements. We go to what is required supplementary information. And in this case, this is the storybook version of the financial statements. It's management's chance to tell the story of the pages 4 through 7, and just a couple items. On page 4, you have the condensed statement of financial position. It's a comparative version, and what we're dealing with the utility is proprietary funds or business. You know, it's kind of the business, and it's the water and electric. And on page 4, you're seeing the condensed version of the two financial statements, and you can see them separately. This is on the accrual basis of accounting, which basic expense has been increments. And thus you have the receivables, payables, and so forth going on through here. When we're looking at a few of these, you'll see the overall net position, which is right on the very bottom, has had a net increase for the year of approximately $650,000. You know, one other area that we had the long-term liabilities, we had a decrease of about $912,000. And one other area, you'll see the deferred credit rate stabilization. And that dropped about, I believe it was about $94,000 for the year. And that rate stabilization, what that is, and there's a note to it in the financials, is when initially you set your rates, that rate stabilization allows, you're going to have, you should have, after analyzing what your rate should be, you should have an increase in that overall account. And then as you go through time, that usually will slowly decrease. So for the first few years, it should end up increasing. And what happens is the utility itself goes through a sheet that they take in their expenses, their capital outlay, and that kind of stuff, and go through that. And that's how that, like I said in the beginning, it usually raises. It's so that that you don't have to do a rate increase, every year or something like that. You look at your rates, and then that grows, and then they use some of that rate stabilization in the future. So, let's see, make sure I got that. So then on page 6, we have the condensed statement of revenues and expenses and changes in net position. And it was kind of broken out between the electric and the water. You will see over the year that electric sales decreased about 125,000, and in turn the electric expenses decreased about 254,000. And again, we're looking at a strange year. We had the COVID-19 pandemic, and I think a lot of things happened, from people working at home, changing things, to some businesses not being open at certain times during the year. So it's not a real easy comparison compared, to that we'd usually have. Usually we have general idea, this is why this. So some of this, is new ground for all of us, but I think the changes and the stuff, a lot of it did have, I believe we looked at residential electric, and we looked at like residential water and stuff like that, and those had an increase. And again, we're thinking that based on what had happened and more people at home and so forth, that made sense. So. Okay. Going on from there, we get into the actual financial statements, and you'll see that on page 8, we have our statement of net position. And again, this is of the business type activities. So this is a combination of both electric and water combined in here. And then on page 9, we actually have our statement of activities. And I know I've been here too long when I'm starting to look at this, and I remember when they switched to this, and I thought, man, I'm never going to like it. And I'm not sure I still do. The old version seemed a little easier and but basically what they're doing is on this, the way to read this statement of activities is they put the expenses first. So you read it from basically from left to right, and then from the top to the bottom. And it's broken by business type activities. So you'll see the electric expenses on top, then right below that water, then you'll see the charges for services. That leaves a net expense or revenue and change in net position. And then down below that, you have general revenues. So again, as I said earlier, with water and electric combined, you'll see that we have a change in net position to the positive of about $650,000. Now, going on to page 10. Let's see, I don't want to. You know what, I'm going to back up and just take you back to actually page 8 and just hit a couple of the highlights there where, we'll see that our current assets are at about 7.4 million. We have restricted assets of about 1.2 million. And a lot of the restricted assets relate back to our debt service. We got to make sure that we have the money set aside and it's restricted for that. And if you look under there, you'll see the reserve fund and the debt retirement funds, and then the restricted held. Basically, all of those numbers relate back to upcoming debt, payments, making sure that you have the funds available to pay for that at that time. You'll see your property and equipment is at 14 million. That is a net number, and there's a note in the notes to the financial. You'll see the gross, but that net would be original cost less accumulated depreciation. And then, yes.
If I can interrupt.
Yes, anytime.
This restricted assets where we have almost 1.2.
Yeah,
When you say reserve, this is for things like bonds and
this is strictly for the bonds and so forth. Yes, correct.
this is kind of like governmental requirement that we
Yeah,
do shape out.
when
Do not touch it.
exactly. So when the bonds are issued, within the bond covenants, they set what you have to have, and basically you got to have. I think the principal's paid 1/12 per month of the principal amount, and 1/6 because the interest payments are made usually twice a year, and then the principal is usually made once a year. So as they are accumulated, that's strictly that reserve or restricted asset is strictly related to the debt and payments on the debt. Exactly. And that's usually controlled by as you issue, like I said, the bond covenants basically tell you what you have to put aside.
Yeah, do not touch.
Do not touch until you have to make the bond payment.
Kathy, are we not touching? Right? Okay, we got not.
And basically I think the payments are, they're scattered a little bit, but as soon as then that amount will be reduced once the payment is made. And then we slowly build it up again until the next payment's needed.
Okay. Thank you. That
Yep,
clarifies.
it's not a problem. And then still going down there, we've got under our total current liabilities, about 808,000. And then current liabilities restricted, and that the difference between the restricted portion is the amount that will be paid out of those restricted assets.
Okay.
And then finally down to the bottom in the net position area, you have roughly about $10 million, 9.8 of net investment in capital assets. And basically what they're doing is they're taking that net, that property and equipment net, and they're subtracting out the debt related to that. And that's where that number comes from. And then you have your restricted for debt service at one point, and then your unrestricted funds are at about 4.3 million. All right, then we go over to page 10. Then we have our statement of net position, and now we break it actually so you can see the funds in separate columns, and then it has the total column. And this gives a little bit more detail than what we were looking when they were both combined. So now you'll have, everything from your actual cash and cash equivalents to your inventory, prepaid insurance. Now you can kind of see that. And then again, your restricted cash is shown there. In the deferred outflows of resources and down below the deferred inflows, in your case, except for that deferred rate stabilization, which I talked about earlier, the other is related to pension. And so we get information from PERA on what the utilities responsibility is for future payments and so forth for retired individuals and so forth. So, and they do a actuarial valuation and give us these numbers, which we are able to obtain. So. All right, so then if we go, then we'll go to the operating statement, the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position on page 11. You know, some of the big items there. So you'll see your operating revenues at about $8.4 million in total, of which 7.1 is from the electric fund and 1.3 from the water fund. One of your major expenses through that is in the electric fund, and that is your purchase power, which is at 4.1 million, which is about, on average, about 350,000 per month. So a very significant portion of these financial statements. Total operating expenses in the electric is $6.7 million, and total operating expenses in water is $964,000, rounded up almost $1 million. Of that, kind of non-cash items is your depreciation, which is about $684,000 in the electric and $386,000 in the water. Interest expense, $85,000 in the electric and $90,000 in the water. And then you'll see again your change by fund in net position is about $387,000 increase in the electric and $263,000 in the water. On page 12, we have our statement of cash flows. This is basically telling you where the money's coming from and where it went. And they break that down in cash flows from operating activities, and you'll see that it's receipt from customers, payments to suppliers, and payments to employees. Then you'll have your cash flows from non-capital financing activities, and then cash flows from capital and related financing activities. And that's where you'll see the majority of your debt payments and interest payments. And then actually your acquisition of fixed assets. So last year under the electric, you'll see that we had about $286,000 worth of fixed assets purchases, and in the water, $272,000. Then from there, cash flows from investing activities, and then it basically gets to your actual change, and then our net increase, decrease in cash and cash equivalents. Then starting on page 13 through page 30, we have the notes to the financial statements. In note 1 on page 13, you'll see summary of significant accounting policies. As I said, if you go to page 20, I believe it is, and we have our capital assets. And again, so you'll see the total capital assets at original cost being that $33 million with accumulated depreciation. That was at the beginning of the year. And then 33.6 million at the end of the year with accumulated depreciation of about $19.5 million, leaving that 14. And again, it shows the depreciation at the bottom of that page for the electric fund being 684 and under the water fund 386. And then if you just flip the page, you'll see our long-term liabilities, and starting on page 21, it shows the the summary of changes in long-term liabilities. So we basically, the components of that are the revenue bonds. And as I noted earlier, you'll see that there was a decrease in them of about 928,000. And then the decrease scheduled for the next year is about 959,000. So our revenue bonds payable went from 5.2 million down to 4.3 million. And then down below that, it shows you what the principal and interest payments will be for the next for the next 5, I guess. Usually you do it for the next 5 years and then you group them after that. But since the debt kind of runs out there as scheduled right now, we just put it through 2027. And then on page 22, it details your different revenue bonds and notes out. On page 23, it shows for the electric fund, it shows your operating revenues for the electric fund there. And there you'll see your residential, commercial, power and lighting, and so forth on that.
Let me ask you to pause there for just a second. We have residential services, and this is Keith or somebody questioned. We have commercial lighting and then power and lighting. Security lights, I think this is a separate category that talks about powering non-metered lights that are. I'm looking at Jeremy because I'm thinking he's got a map probably of these little lights hanging on people's
No,
yard lights or something.
but those, well, yeah, those are revenues. Yeah.
So what's the difference between commercial lighting and power and lighting?
Commercial lighting is typically your small businesses. Power lighting are your industrial.
Industrial, yeah, it's the size of the, when it's billed and what we get for, when we look at the billing, it breaks it down into residential, then like the commercial lighting, and it's kind of misleading to have the lighting, but I, like Keith said there, that's more your smaller business type setup.
Okay.
And then your power and lighting is going to be your major industrial.
Because the word lighting is
Yeah.
confusing to this is something.
And that's,
something power,
no, and I think that's just, it's probably old terminology and it's never been changed.
Power and light companies used to be separate things. Power. Does it? Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep. But I was just gonna quick, I had last year's here and I was just gonna. Since we,
If you did a quick start, these are comes to simple.
correct,
So-
yep, those are the different ones and it does explain that down right below that a little bit. So when we were talking, so this year, the residential was at 2,444,000. The year ago was 2,337,000. So the residential portion did grow, but then if you look at, let's go to the industrial stuff. That is that 3,228,000, and a year ago it was at 3,440,000. So that took a little, and a lot of that, again, I think we can contribute to the pandemic and so forth. So. Then you get into the defined pension and benefit. I recommend that started on page 24. And if you need something to put you to sleep, I would recommend reading that note to the financial statement. It's one of those things that GASB, which is Governmental Accounting Standard Board, requires to be in there, but it's not necessarily an easy read or anything like that, but we put it in because that's what they tell us. So then we get, actually, we can jump to our next contribution to this, and that's going to be the independent, on page 35, it's our independent auditors.
Forgive me, but in the midst of all this very boring reading,
Oh.
it says the commission's share of the net $1 million. Yeah, so that's $1 million that we're responsible for providing to
PRA over, over
the pension fund for
yeah.
all
and-
of the above.
Right, and that's where I said they do that actuarial value based on past employees, current employees, and project it out into to know what your liability is.
So
Now,
the employees have a contribution, but this is the
this is what the employer's
employer's
response.
side.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so, and it doesn't matter if you're a school district, or you're another city, or another utility or other form of governmental entity. If you're taking part in the PERA, Public Employees Retirement, and I've got two pieces to that. You don't see the other piece here. They also have police portion, but so if you were to look at the city's financial statements, that one's probably going to have both parts in there, and it even gets a little bit longer. So, but yeah, if you're a part of that, no matter who, you all get the same breakout, and I'll have these notes to it.
Thank you.
No, not a problem. So then the next one is our next report is on page 35. And that's the independent auditors report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters. So here is, we call it a SAS 115 letter. But here we have the internal, we look at the internal controls and we talk about, deficiencies and so forth. That. So, and basically did not have any findings in those areas. And then one other report that's required is the state of Minnesota on page 37 as the independent auditors report on Minnesota legal compliance. And it basically tells you in there, so we're looking at cash and investments. We're looking at debt, we're looking at miscellaneous provisions, conflicts of interest, so on and so forth. And again, did not find any issues in relation to that. And lastly, there should be a separate letter. It should be what we call, it's the letter to governance. And that will not be in the bound document. It should have been separate. Okay. And in that, when we start the engagement, we send out an engagement letter, and it basically tells you, what our responsibilities, what your responsibilities, and that gets signed, and that's kind of the contract between us. Now, at the end of the audit, we come back to you and we have to look at and respond in this letter. And it's broken down. The first area is significant audit findings. And then it breaks that down into qualitative aspects of accounting practice. And again, one of the biggest area, when they talk about accounting estimates, and one of the biggest estimates that in these financial statements is the actuarial valuations from the pension fund, which again, we get from PERA and there. Then you go down, next was page 2 of that letter, you'll see difficulties encountered in performing the audit. And basically we encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management and completing the audit. Then it talks about corrected and uncorrected misstatements. We did not have any major issues there. Disagreements with management. Again, we were pleased to report no such disagreements. Then part of the audit also is management has to make representations to us at the end of the audit. And so we have what we call a management representation letter. And that is signed by the general manager, and also the commission president is signed that. And basically it goes through and says, we've made all this available. Your employees, access to records, all that kind of stuff. Management consultations with other independent accountants. We did not have, there was none of that. Other findings and issues. Again, nothing there. So basically, that is my presentation, but now I'd like to open it up if there's questions or comments. And I also always like to, I know this is a short and quick synopsis of things. If there's something in there, or within your audit report, our phone numbers and so forth are on there, I feel free to give us a call if you look at something and want a further explanation. If we were able to do that, we would gladly do that. So.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. If we can take
Please.
time to discuss the phone call that I got, I believe, from Chris.
Oh, sure. Okay, and maybe I'll explain that. One of the requirements that we do is we are required to do fraud risk interviews. And we try and mix it up. We not only we try and, in this case, a commissioner, if it was a different entity, a board member, and then other employees within different areas. And I don't know who all got called, but we usually try and get somebody in the office area, somebody in general management. We try and get somebody in the electric and the water and so forth. So, and it's a bunch of questions related to, which helps us try and decide, is there areas that we need to concentrate on while we're doing the audit. So I didn't mean to take it away from you, but I just kind of wanted to explain.
Brings everything up
Yeah.
to the table. And I don't have any complaints or anything about it. I found it very interesting. The angles sometimes where these questions come from. And I think Dan expressed that at the last meeting. You know, he remembers those questions, and that was about 2 years ago. So it's always interesting. The things that, is it Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
What about
He brought up things like, and Michelle, I noticed that you said this too, the checks and balances. You know, if and Greg, I don't know what you do behind the scenes as chairman.
I'm not allowed to talk about it. No,
No, but I guess where I'm going with this before is checks and balances.
Hmm.
You know, Chris brought up if there's a check being paid to, you know, ABC company, did it get written to ABC? Was it cashed by ABC, or did it go somewhere else? You know, who's checking that? Nobody's accusing anybody of anything, but this is what he brought. So right away when he said that, I'm going, should we be looking at that? And that wasn't even on my radar. But that's where the checks and balances thing comes in.
sure. And I was on last year's call list, so I was the new chairman, and they called me, and I was a little flummoxed.
Yeah.
What? I didn't do it. It wasn't me. But part of that, I guess, is they're just seeing if there's anything in my memory or in my course of doing stuff that appeared odd. This was my moment to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, they've got these checks to Bob's Groceries, and I don't know who that, but that didn't happen. But, you know, there is a check and balance. I have, when the accounts payable come down each month, when you get to be chairman, you'll have the fun of doing it. You go through that, and there's a Kathy initial, and usually there's a Keith initial. Sometimes he forgets one, and I put a tag on those, and we go talk to him later about it. But if I have a question about any of those, I have been pretty good about saying, what the heck is this? Why are we doing this? And how come we have 2 bond payments this month? Those are big deals, at 300 and something thousand, and they both came the same month. Well, it's just the way the month ended, and we paid this bill. And then there's a bill from Mars, and it's like, holy cow, we got 15 different tabs, all signed by Scott, and it was for $37.60. And we needed to pick up a washer, I took him to school. And so we have accounts for those things. And so I've had, and Keith has said, just call and check. So I do. I call Kathy and say, I don't get this. Or I put a sticky note on the thing and say, well, fix me. So from my perspective, when I got this call, I said, geez, I don't know. I call Kathy on it. So if there's an issue, I get it resolved, at least to my satisfaction. And then when things come up at the meetings, I can see, I noticed that, but Kathy explained it this way. And so she has been my go-to on what the heck is going on with this deal. And so from a transparency standpoint, when he was talking to me last year, I said, I don't have any things. Chris, if you need the answer to that one, you need to go here or check with Keith. I don't know. I see the bill, I see the receipts coming through. And how come we have Elan for different things? How come we have 2 different, 3 different, 4 different Verizons? Well, it's because this guy has a phone, this guy has a phone, and they have this tower or that tower. And so from my standpoint, as far as I can tell, things look good from my side. But if you need a detail, I pass the buck. So,
Yeah, but I think it's good that I heard that.
Yeah.
Because at the last meeting I'm not sure what you were doing for a month, but anyway.
I can't talk.
No, but I asked the question, what is Greg's duty as a chairperson?
Yeah.
Because your job description is much different than mine. It is, and because I don't have that opportunity, but that's why I study the payables so closely and ask questions. What is this? And I'm in my first term, so I'm learning.
I'm gonna make an opportunity available to you right now. When I get the box from Kathy, you're coming to my house.
Okay. That's fine. It's just nice to know.
And if I can say something, just hearing you guys, part of it is actually making, I think that call can be kind of an awakening call, but, and again, we're not pointing fingers, but we just want to make sure somebody is taking an interest in looking at, we don't want to hear that, oh, we don't do anything, or, it's just, so hearing you guys say that, yeah, we're looking at something, or I'm doing something here, or even if you're not getting that opportunity and somebody else is, if you're looking through the information and saying, asking questions, that's on my side, that's what I like to hear, because that means that, it makes it that much harder to do things. And I just, and we call it a fraud risk interview. And basically, if you were to ask me, I just took another class on that, and it said, basically, any entity that that will be auditing, there's fraud happening. Now, is fraud, hundreds of thousands of dollars, 20,000, whatever? Probably not. It could be, fraud is as simple as, that ream of paper going out the door, or as simple as somebody putting down an extra hour of work or something like that. That's all, and it's all fraud. And in the sample that they gave us in the, from the deal, the amount of fraud that was happening, it should come to our types of fraud. It should come up to 100%, or, but the numbers when we were looking at, when I was taking the class, it was always more than 100%. And the guy goes, and the reason for that is in many situations, there's multiple fraud going on. And again, a lot of times it's nothing major. It's, like I said, it can be just something small. But by you guys being involved and interested, that just makes it that much harder.
The other subject matter is HR. You brought up HR, and it made me think. I said, well, who does HR? And we talked about it at the last meeting a little bit. So if, I don't know, if let's say that in any small business, what do we have? Employees, 12, 14?
15 total.
15 total. Yeah, it used to be 17, right? So if somebody has a problem, and I'd be curious to see what your two answers are. They may not want to come to the bosses to complain. Because in a small group, you're already pointing that person out. And I'm sure that person is thinking, gosh, if I say something, I might get fired or whipped or, whatever. So how do we deal with that? I mean, somebody shouldn't be afraid to come up and ask Michelle something without you changing, getting mad at them because they are rocking the boat or something. And I'm not saying that happened, I'm just using it, or Keith, if somebody comes up, they don't want to say it, do you have unhappy people working for you because they're afraid to say something? So that to me falls under HR, and I don't know what we are to do with it as commissioners if they don't want to go to Keith, or they don't want, if they're not getting along with this worker or something. How do you deal with HR?
It's really interesting, especially in, with a smaller organization. I mean, and I'll say that in two different ways. Part of it is you've got 3 commissioners. So a lot of times what I see in, let's say it's a city or something like that, you may have a council member or 2 council members. But if you start doing that here, you're in a meeting. And so that makes it, but usually it'd be nice to have some kind of like committee that the person can go to, and then, but here it kind of gets hard, yes, it could be one of the commissioners and then some of the others, maybe. But like you say, if you had, if it was a place that had 100 employees, it's a whole lot different than one that has 15.
Yeah, that question just threw me.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of trapped having a 3-person commission because we can't.
And I don't know if there's something, I thought of the same thing, just because I see it in other, and I believe you're with the city.
If I'm a city administrator.
Okay. So, if it's something where, you could have, you don't have to worry about 2 people, 2 commissioners or 2 council members talking to each other, because sometimes there's value in that. But in this situation, it's almost like you're breaking the law. You got to have a regular meeting. I don't know if I've been working with the utility for many years, and I've always kind of wondered why we don't have like a 5. And I don't know if it's tough to get that or if there's some other restrictions that.
Keith, you're getting into some nasty weeds here. Don't go there.
Okay.
This is a discussion that we've been having for probably a year.
Oh, okay.
Should we be 3 or should we be 5? And that conversation goes on yet today. It would certainly help something.
And part of that, if I may, is if we go to 5 and we still end up with 3 because nobody wants to do it. I mean, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
Because it's been hard to fill in the past.
But if you are able to fill and you're at 5, then it's not a violation or not a meeting when 2 of you want to talk
Right.
together.
Yeah, but technically it is a violation. If Dan talks to Rick, and they agree to something, or they talk about something, and then Dan goes and talks to Greg, and they talk about the same thing, and essentially.
Then I'll turn that one over to the legal side.
Yeah,
'Cause-
it does, you gotta be a little careful.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to violate the spirit of the law.
Right. No, I get that. But I do think that there is in any, I don't care if it's a city council or whatever, when they have the multiple, if 2 people, I'm sure that there's people that, maybe they just want a further understanding. What it was your understanding of this? And sometimes that helps, or so that, that you could be prepared when you do come to the meeting, but you can't even, when there's only 3, you can't do that.
Yeah, I can't come to your house.
And look at
Oh,
those.
that's right. Oh, well. Shucks. Let's think of the.
I thought it was a great idea, but now it's just hit me again.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what the answer or if it can be changed, but that's something that probably you ask the attorney to read through the commit, how it's set up and so forth.
Well, just to jump in, to answer Rick's question, it is difficult, but that's why in your personnel manual, you need to have sort of your procedure in there, and I have to double check what the city says, and if we don't have it in there, it needs to get in there. But there always needs to be a respect for the chain of command, and then there's outside agencies like Sand Creek, for example, is an employee assistance program, and I've actually had exposure to them through my work at the county, where they can come in to say, if the employees who are having a disagreement or whatever, they can come in and help counsel a manager in terms of how to resolve a particular employee issue. And so kind of do have to walk a bit of a fine line when you bring a council person or a commissioner in, because HR laws, and then you throw in union groups, and so you have to be really careful about how you handle HR situations, especially when you start factoring in contracts and the procedures and contracts for discipline and those types of things. So it's a bit of a conundrum when you have organizations this small, and so it'll be something we're looking at in terms of, because we're updating the city's personnel manual. As soon as I can actually find 5 minutes to read chapter 1. But HR issues are always touchy, potentially, and in a smaller organization. At the county, we had many more departments, we had more supervisors. So it was, okay, you start with your supervisor, you work your way up to the department head, then you work your way up to the assistant county administrator, who was the personnel, HR person. So you've got lots of layers that people need to respect and go through that process. So I don't have an answer for you, but it's just, there's a lot of factors to consider when you're talking. How do you be responsive to personnel issues while still making sure that you're meeting all the other requirements of a personnel policy or a union contract? So we'll work on it.
Keep us posted.
I will.
I worked on that with Jenny and.
Yes.
And
I have Jenny's notes, thank
at
goodness.
that point, I remember the sequence to take place, chain of command to take place is your direct supervisor.
Yeah.
Not comfortable, department head, not comfortable, city administrator, comfortable, city attorney. Yeah, that was as far as we got on that. I remember that.
Yeah.
That's probably a little beyond Mr. Porter's
Yeah.
area of expertise for the moment, so
But
we'll
that's what I.
use that as a segue. I appreciate your input there. Yeah, those are, and obviously you need to ask those questions in terms of how things going. If there's anything, I suppose anyway, I don't know this, but I suppose that, this gives Chris in this case an opportunity to say, okay, and then if there is, then it's just, oh, if we should know about that, maybe we better turn the page and look someplace else. But, I assume everything came out okay because we got this letter at the end that separate said everything was okay.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we're not looking at everything, but we feel comfortable in issuing, we call it a clean or unmodified opinion on the financial statements. And again, when it first came out, because this fraud risk interview wasn't always around, it's been around for years now, but when we first started doing it, it's like, we can get as much, sometimes we get more information on somebody, when I've been to class, they say, the best one to probably talk to, let's say it's a school district, might be the janitor, because they might be seeing something that's going out the door or seeing something, or so. That's why we don't just limit it to, upper management or, we want to talk to the employees too. And because sometimes they'll see something that, that might interest us and point us in another direction to look at. So.
And just so the commission knows, they don't tell me who they're gonna interview. So it's not like I can prep anybody. They have the employee list and they reach out to whoever they want to talk to.
Yeah, and it's, the impact of that interview must be pretty good, because Dan can tell you exactly what the questions were, and that was what, 2 years ago. You can tell me yours, I just told you mine. So we're remembering this phone call, and that's great. So I don't have any other questions. I brought up what Chris and I talked about.
And the other deal is, it can go really well, or it can be yes, no, yes, or it can lead into some, and you try and get people talking, because that's when we're getting, yeah. And I'd rather hear from, the employee or you guys than having me talk. So we try and lead it into, and that's why sometimes I think I like having some of my staff, and Chris has been with us for 10 years or so, so it's not like but sometimes, if it's the head guy coming, you get a different response than if it's, somebody, and it seems to work, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming down from downtown Staples all the way down here to visit us. Appreciate the support. I'm going to continue to read even through some of the speaking parts. And
Well,
questions we'll get back.
thank you guys for engaging us, and it's been it's nice working with the group and so forth. So
Thanks, Keith.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
somebody else can have a hot chair now. If there's nothing else, I might take off then.
That's good.
All right.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, drive safe.
Yeah.
So I'm going back to in your budget. I think kind of wrap that up. Is there any questions on that? Can we move to the AMI? Ongoing business there. Jeremy kind of touched on some of that earlier.
Yeah, I just mentioned for AMI, electric is at 94% complete. Water is at 29.9%. And then if I may, I'll just move on to the EV for a usage update for the month of June.
Just a quick question
Yes,
on the water AMI. I understand that this is a little more complicated because I generally have to get into the house for this. Do we have a supply of water AMI units?
Actually, the water AMI hasn't moved in a while because we are waiting on water nodes. Because of COVID, some of the Chinese factories have shut down for a while, and there's a delay in product being distributed. So the water's been basically on hold for.
We don't have the stuff to do.
Correct. We are hoping for a shipment next month.
Yep.
Last we heard,
Yep.
that they were gonna be able to start catching up and get us back up. And then you're right, as far as the process is involved, it is more involved because we have to get in the house, which means we do a mailing to try to encourage people to call us in and schedule a time. We do have, when we get into the installation process, we do have water staff on hand to do Wednesday evenings for those that do work all day, so that we can try to get it in house that way. We do follow up several times to get the water meters replaced. We take advantage of any opportunities that do come up to get this done at that time. If we go through all of that and we have just a very small percentage that is just refused to work with us, the commission has approved for an AMR meter reading fee that will get put in place once we get further along in the process.
Okay.
We had to do that when we went from the old meters to an AMR system. Every utility pretty much does that to catch up those last couple of stragglers.
Electric vehicles.
Usage update for the month of June, there were 27 sessions, $377.66 was charged, delivering 699 kilowatt hours. And I will continue to provide those monthly updates. That was something I requested. Until you tell me otherwise.
At some point, maybe you could produce a little graph. It would say, okay, next month was this many. Oh, it would be interesting to see how that changes
Okay.
over time.
Okay. Would you like to have that still continue to be its own line item, or would you like me to include that in the report section?
Mr. Schwartz, I'd like to see it like this. If you could take, 30 seconds to say, here's what the EV was. It's one of those things I think it's on a lot of people's mind, what's happening with electric vehicles. We've got charging stations here in Coburn's downtown, and we've got the little ones. I suppose that's the subject that you're going to talk about, but it'd be interesting for me to see how that's changing as we go forward. Okay. I mean, if it was 600 this month, it was 400 last month, it's going downhill. We have to rethink how we're investing in it. But if we see that goes up each and every month, and I think we need to find a way to track this when it's done by number of automotive stuff, so we know that's a part of the package. Let's see what's going on there. But I think that's an interesting number.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to see, maybe not every meeting, but every 6 months or something, and see, here was our growth plate. Now it's this, as the whole industry changes.
Yeah. I've just been counting Teslas on the road lately, and it's amazing how many you see out there today.
A lot of people are understanding that this is real.
Yeah. Okay, so then you're back to D, and you want to update? Do we have a contract?
Oh, for E, service territory,
Okay.
or do I?
What did you want to say about EV? Did you?
That was it, was just the numbers.
Okay.
So I'm
E,
done.
service territory.
Service territory. So as the commission is aware, we have been working with East Central Energy on the annexation of the Princeton Business Park. The contract was signed by East Central Energy. And so all I'm looking for, nothing's changed since the last time that this has been introduced. All I'm asking for is a motion to approve the contract. We'll get that signed, and then I will start working with the State Public Utilities Commission to do a formal adjustment of service territories, unless there's any questions.
I would entertain a motion to approve this contract.
So move.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion's carried. Is that something that I can sign today?
Actually, it is just signed by the general manager. So I don't-
Wonderful. Perfect. Credit checks in lieu of deposits.
Yes, this was a discussion, this was introduced last meeting. Mr. Hanson, you were unavailable. I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to discuss it with you here as well. We had, the commission has been, this has been a topic that the commission has been thinking about for a while. I had noticed that one of our peers, Owatonna Public Utilities, is currently doing a credit check for determining whether a deposit is required or not. They put me in contact with their contractor, Online Utility Exchange. And so last time we went through the memo a little bit, the big thing for the chair to know is they do have some defaults, but there is flexibility in us allowing for an evaluation of basically a green light, red light statement. OUE will use Experian as their credit check. But they also, by providing a service to other utilities, also have access to those payment histories. So if somebody is moving from one utility to another, and OUE serves both of them, they know if there's been any payment issues. Gives us the ability to minimize our risk and allocate deposits more fairly, more equitably, I believe. It's as part of the process, there is a website access. The office staff would have the ability to immediately access that with the information that we would collect through the application process and get an answer within 3 to 5 seconds as to whether it's a go or no go. If it's a no-go, there is an automatic letter that is produced that we can then give the customer to explain why. If the customer disagrees with the finding, then there is a phone number there to contact the OUE and the credit agencies directly, and office staff are not part of that conversation at that point. There is a cost associated with it. And based on our metrics, I estimated that the average cost to the utility would be approximately $4.30 per applicant. However, I do want to point out, I think there would be significant labor costs in going down this path because we would not need to spend time collecting historical utility data on customers. It also gives us the benefit of doing ID verifications right off the bat. We do have some customers that have given us false social security numbers in the past. And this would be a way for us to prevent that from happening. And like I said, the deposit decision-making process would be clear and absolute, thereby eliminating any customer confusion or any concerns of treating people differently. They also do have a collection services that we're going to look at as well. I introduced this last month, and Mr. Swartz, if you please interject if you want. It seemed like both you and Dan were very supportive.
I think it's a great program.
I
think it's just.
I read through the notes, it makes perfect sense. I think I don't know what you need from us to go forward, but you should be going forward.
Okay, so I do have a couple of questions. We didn't talk about this last month. It is an added cost of excuse me, like I said, what I estimated that over $4 per applicant. We currently do not charge an application fee. I know many utilities do. Dan had mentioned that he thought maybe we should. I guess I'm looking for some direction from.
Yeah, no, I think the numbers, if I remember correctly, one, we have to at least cover our raw cost. And then whatever we have involved with time with the office people, so it can be a number. It doesn't have to just cover that, because your cost actually went up in labor too to process this, even though if it only takes a little bit of time. What Commissioner Erickson and I as landlords shared is that when we do a background check on them, I think Dan charged 35, we charge 30. I mean, so I'm not suggesting that amount, but there's fees out there that people that are renting and everything are expecting to pay. I think to get me all set up on Princeton Electric company, the PPU, they would expect something, and is it $10? I don't know, but
Do some of our colleagues in the industry charge application fees that you're aware of?
Yes.
And for example, does Outage charge one?
I don't remember specifically other utilities. I do know that other utilities do it. I can bring that information together.
Okay, so I'd like to, first of all, I think we need to move forward with this. As with regards to a fee, the $10 number seems fine to me, but I would like to see if you can dig up what somebody like East Central is doing, what does Condensed do, what does Elk River do? Somebody, some of our neighbors, I don't know. Forgive me for not knowing this, but if you're in Zimmerman, where do they get their electricity? I assume it's Condensed, but so those people around us, Malacca, Mora, whatever, what do they charge for an application fee? I want to be very, very competitive, but I don't want to be stupid. So find that out, and then I think we should march forward. And
Okay.
do it as soon as
So
possible.
I guess what I would suggest is if the commission wants to approve if the commission wants to approve this concept, that way I can get the contract together with OUE. It's gonna take us a few months because we have to integrate this within our system. I'm hoping that maybe I can have this ready by October 1 timeframe to get this in place. In the meantime, I think there's gonna be a lot of little questions like that I would like to get direction from the commission on. So we can just work through that as we move forward, but at least if we could get get an approval that, yes, we're gonna do this, move forward, and those details will work through.
Yeah, I think it's ready, set, go, and I'm sure Dan would agree on this.
Yeah,
If you
Dan
need a
liked the
motion.
idea also.
You need a motion for
I would, yes, sir.
it? Okay.
It would be a new contract with OUE to be our service provider.
Little discussion yet,
Oh, yes.
before I make a motion, or Mr. Chair, if you want to. I think we should have one system though, not two.
Yes,
So,
that is my intention, yes.
okay, because I noticed in the minutes that a concern was, are we gonna have two systems or not? I would say one system.
Yeah, I agree, because otherwise you might get people that pick and choose, and
Yeah.
then that doesn't lower your risk, that increases your risk.
Right, and it just would add confusion to
Correct.
office.
Correct. When I talk about little details, there are also cases of, okay, we do this going forward, what about past customers? And my thought is, as we roll this out, if somebody is an existing customer and wants to get their deposit back, and they're willing to pay the application fee for us to do the credit check, that would seem reasonable to me. So I think there are, again, I can see a lot of questions that we're gonna have as we actually start doing it.
Yeah, there's gonna be a transition period,
Sure. And
but
It's always a
ultimately,
learning
you're right,
curve.
we wanna have one program.
Right.
But while we make that transition, you guys will have to figure it out, and by you guys, I really mean you guys over there, Kathy. Because you're gonna be faced with dealing with this, somebody walks in, Chris or Debbie or Kathy's gonna have to say, okay, here's the deal. Yeah, but, I paid my $275 or, $5,000 for my deposit, and I wanna get it back. Sure, here's the way to do that. Cool. So we have a transition policy in place, but basically, we wanna get to the one deal, move.
Yes.
So now, Mr. Schwartz, if you would be so good, just make a motion.
One more question, this is for Kathy. Do you like this system, Kathy, the way it's designed?
I said it in the presentation that they did for Keith, and yes, we
Okay,
both were very much in favor of it.
okay. I just wanted to make you happy, not just us. So if you're with it, then
Well,
I will make that motion to go with the system OUE for.
I will make the comment that I think this is a plus for the office staff. In my view, having been an office manager for a while, it takes some of the burden of that. No, you can't offer their plate, it puts it on this miscellaneous other, which is kind of cheating, but it is, it's what it is, it's their information. So it's not our fault that they have a credit rating of X, Y, or Z. Hey, we came back with 850, so you're okay, good. Can we borrow some money? But it goes forward, and I hope that's what it does. It makes their job a little less stressful and more to the point, so we can be back to helping.
Yes, and I would also like to reiterate that this addresses the concern that the commission had raised, which is the current deposit waiver requirement was 12 months worth of utility data, which if for young families, for people just starting out, they may not have. This is an opportunity that if you're a good credit risk, you benefit from that, regardless of what your history is with, whether you have one or not. That's what you're trying to say.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
I
Aye. Motion is carried. G on this is ACH discussion.
Yeah, there was just some interest in the commission to continue to have that on the agenda. We continue to let customers know that we have an ACH option. And particularly when we get new applicants, when folks call in, make sure that they're aware of that. Try to communicate that in every way that we can. We were going to try to put it on the bill message, but with the lawn sprinkling situation that popped up because of the drought, that took precedence.
Can you put something on the door when they come in to pay their bill? Not their
Okay.
door,
Okay,
our office door,
yeah,
so they see it.
okay,
Christie's window or something.
yeah. Okay, I'll look into that.
Good. New business, donation policy discussion.
I'm bringing this back up for a couple of reasons. One is, to give a commission update that at the last meeting, the commission approved a donation of $1,000 to the Legion for the July 4th fireworks. After that meeting, I was contacted by the Legion. They had completed their fundraising, so they had funded everything for this year and actually asked us to not provide them with $1,000 since they had paid for everything. They did ask if that could be earmarked for next year in some way. So that the commission's motion to donate $1,000 was very politely declined by the Legion. But they did ask about next year. In addition, I've been approached about a possible donation of either time, materials, and/or financial contribution to the new scoreboard for North Park. We've also received a request for donation for this winter's Light Up Princeton event. And I'm really looking for some direction from the commission as to how you want to evaluate the process and work through these donation requests. Not sure where the commission wants to go with it, but would appreciate any feedback you guys have.
I'm a person that likes to have a budget for that rather than shooting from the hip, because you never know when you have to use that hip. Somehow we should structure a budget so it's there, and when it's tapped, it's tapped. If we need to make an arrangement after it's tapped, we still have that option to do that. But I don't like just taking it out of our cash. So that's how I feel about it. How much is too much? I don't know. We did the high school banner stuff. Was that 2,500 or something?
Yeah, so 2,025 somewhere there.
Yeah. So then this was a surprise with 1,000. And if we want to help Jules out, that's another option. So when people start hearing that PPU is receptive to these things, you're going to get hit more often, which is maybe just fine, but what's the menu for it?
So I agree with Commissioner Schwartz that we ought to have some idea of what we're going to spend on donations during any given year. Make it a category, if you will. The other thing I think I would like to recommend highly is that if somebody wants a donation from us, that they fill out a form, submit a letter, but I don't want to be put on the spot with somebody come, we need $1,000 now. And like we're sitting here, this is the first we've heard about it. I want that to come from you. If they want to come and make a personal presentation, I'm all for that, but you should have had a heads up. We should have had a heads up, and we've thought, this is something we would entertain or not. But it's uncomfortable as a member of the community to have to say no to somebody, but you might have to. It might be appropriate for us to say, gosh, we wish we could, but we don't have that money for a scoreboard, sorry. See how uncomfortable that would be? But you get my point. So, I think there are things like the scoreboard that we'd love to support. It's an important, we've got light bulbs going off up there. That's a good thing for us.
LED, don't get much on that.
But, let's have something in writing. Let's have you get a look at it so that the commissioners have some idea what's coming up, so we're not kind of blindsided. What can be constant requests, I'm speaking from experience. You work for a company, well, can you give this, and how about this, and can you empty the ammo too? Yeah, right, gotcha. But I think it's in our best interest to have a heads up and a budget to go with it, so. You might take a look at 2020's donations. Let's see what they were. And does that look like a way to formulate a budget? What if we have requests for this year? Kind of put it in some perspective and then march forward.
Okay, so you want me to bring that information to the commission? What we spent, what we did in 2020, and what we've received for requests so far.
And is that a way to kind of start the format for finding out the budget?
You could almost add 2019 in there pretty easily, but you're just looking at the year end, 12 months.
Okay. Just, let's look at what we've spent. And will that give us a good idea of what we can allow? And then maybe there was something in 2019 that was really off the wall, but we decided to do it. So let's try to kind of balance that going forward. But I really think the formal letter or form or something, so that people like us can say, okay, here's what we want, and they can detail out why it's important. And then we can go forward. Sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just to shed some light on what the city does do, and I appreciate the way it is handled from our liquor fund for donations is in our council packet. The person or organization that is requesting the donation does fill out a form stating what it's going to be used for, how much, how many people it will affect. Affects Princeton, primarily Princeton area residents. So council gets a chance to look at that, and then we also do budget for that. So when we get towards the end, I think we just cut it off unless circumstances exist where we can do more. But the system in place seems to work well for us.
Michelle, could you email me a copy of that donation form?
Yep.
That I can share.
I think
Say
that'd be a great-
let's not reinvent the wheel if it's okay to use that.
I know I appreciate it. I know what it is. And then our finance, Tracy is good at providing us with information on, have we donated to this in the past? How much has it done? At the previous donation, was it up, was it less? And one thing we always, just one more thing, and we try to focus on Princeton area. Not for something that's national here internationally.
Yeah.
For Princeton residents. Primarily.
I think let's not reinvent the wheel. You guys have a form that's working. Plagiarize. Go right to it.
Pretty much just have to change the logo and you'll probably be all set.
It's
Give us a
Solheim
starting
Veterans
point.
Field. Right. It says right at the top, Solheim Veterans Field. I know, I just, I always get in trouble.
Good deal. Wonderful. That's a good, so we don't need any motions on that. We've been
No,
given some direction.
I think it's an ongoing discussion as we figure out
Wonderful.
how the commission wants to do it.
Wonderful. Mini manhole requirements, Mr. Daniels. You are on.
Okay, last
Let me
month,
just ask before you start,
yes.
are you kind of an expert in mini manholes, or how did you get this thing?
Did you call mini because you can fit through and I can't?
No, I can't fit through that either. Actually, it got brought up last month. We were talking about some of the curb stops that show up in people's driveways. I'm not picking on you. But they tend to be problematic. The driveways are moving around, they're pulling them up and not pulling them back down, and the driveways are shearing them off. So actually, we had talked about it a little bit and decided that maybe a mini manhole would be a really good solution to prevent further trouble. Dan had kind of talked about it a little bit. Dan's familiar with it, using the mini manholes. We just didn't have nothing in place to mandate the use of them. So I guess what I'm proposing is we mandate the use of them on all new construction going forward. Then Keith and I had talked a little bit about how can we control what people buy for a mini manhole? There's a lot of different options out there. There's a lot of different costs to them. So I guess my proposal would be that we buy X amount, put them on the shelf and let them buy them from us so we can control the quality of them and what they are.
So what is a mini manhole? Help me here.
Well, you know what a big manhole looks like?
Yes.
This one's just smaller.
Ah, there go mini. I take that.
A mini manhole, it's very similar to a big manhole, other than it's reduced down to 8 inches. And basically, it gives you an 8-inch cover with about a 20-inch platform on the bottom. So basically what would happen in your driveway, when you go to blacktop and your curb stop is there, you're gonna grade the driveway, leave the curb stop sticking up just a little bit above gravel. You'll set this over the top of it and they'll blacktop this down.
Oh,
So
okay.
this mini manhole will go up and down with the driveways and leave the curb stop alone. So if we need access to the curb stop, you just remove the lid off the mini manhole and your curb stop is accessible there.
So this is only appropriate in places where the curb stop happens to be on private property or something.
Yep,
Yeah.
If it's in a driveway or a sidewalk.
sidewalk, yep.
Cool. I think that makes perfectly good sense. I mean, it's gotta be a pain in keister if you've got to plow around it.
Yeah,
Okay.
is it,
Around it is-
would we have to do the whole small?
That's a good question. We had talked about that, of what to do with existing.
Would the, I was troublemaker on this, the snowfall came first time, and I called Scott over and he temporarily fixed it, and then he told me this was an issue all over. But anyway, would the development where I'm at, would we have to have this put in now? So
I don't think we ever decided on.
Yeah, we were looking at just going forward, just requiring the new developments to have this. We did reach out to the city to ask about, our permits pulled when driveways are redone and things like that, which the city doesn't do.
because they are talking about redoing driveways.
Pardon?
They are talking about redoing driveways.
It would be a good opportunity to convert, but we usually don't know
Violence.
about it. It would be, again, it would be nice, but we were basically gonna grandfather everybody in right now and do this going forward. If the city ever, increases some of their, like I said, permits, if somebody redoes their driveway, then at that time, we might be able to catch some older stuff, but without an enforcement mechanism. it's- So
Would
at least
that-
that's our thought.
With that being said, I guess wouldn't we be willing to sell them the mini manholes
Oh, yes.
as, say, if you want one, come and buy one from us when they do your driveway,
That's,
have them put it in.
oh,
there.
when they do the driveway.
Yep.
That's the time.
Yes, absolutely.
We just wouldn't make it a requirement.
You know what I'll do is I will bring that to the, when we have an association. meeting. Tell them about it. Yeah. That would be the ideal.
So it is one of those things, Scott and his crew are really good. If they are out and they see somebody prepping for that, they'll pull over and talk to them and let them know.
Sure. Yeah.
Hey, if you do this, then you don't have to worry about your curb stop getting damaged.
Yeah.
So it does require though an addition to our service, our customer service policy. So that's part of the proposal. That's in the memo. Again, Scott mentioned this, this is in reaction to a conversation that Dan was really a part of. This has been more for just an introduction at this meeting. Wanted to give the commission time to sleep on it. Make sure that we haven't missed anything, and then we can talk about it at the next meeting. And if it's still makes sense, we can do a motion at that time.
Okay. I think it sounds, it makes good sense to me. I mean, go forward, how we grandfather people in if they're redoing or something like that, make something available at minimum cost. I think it's good for everybody. Okay,
Thank you.
Scott.
thanks. Scott. And that's it. Anybody else final comments? I was entertained. Adjournment at this point.
I will make that motion to adjourn.
Motion is seconded. Those in favor say aye. Motion. Thank you.
Thank you.